All right, got it.
All right, so Peter, we are recording again.
Here we go again.
Good to see you. I guess we'll make our introductions here. My name is Luke Gangstadt. Our channel here is the business of esoteric knowledge and wisdom. We're having an ongoing conversation about the occult, hidden knowledge, things that have been information and knowledge and history that has been intentionally suppressed from people. And it is Peter, my co-host Peter Rusevich, and my deepest conviction that through an ongoing honest conversation about the hidden knowledge of history, both ancient and even relatively recent history, that we will be able to liberate the human spirit. And without too much further ado, I am the author of a book titled The Musings of De La Pew. It's about the nature of the universe, the nature of God, human beings, and the relationship between all three of them. It was the study of a better part of 20 years. It's available on Amazon.com. You'll find the details of it in the description page. Now I'd like Peter to introduce himself, and after that, we'll just kind of summarize where we left off in the previous conversation, and we'll let our audience know where the conversation is headed, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, just as Luke said, I'm Peter Rusevich. I'm the co-host of this YouTube channel that is getting better and better each day. I am the writer of the 3 books that are getting widely popular on Amazon and that are selling very well. Their names are Nikola Tesla, Third Reich and the Extraterrestrials, The Occulture, and the Mythologies of Techno World. And all of them are available at the Facebook page, at the Facebook pages and the Amazon portals. So go
and
for
all the details for Peter's books and my book as well can be found in the description page for our podcast. So after you click subscribe, you'll find in the description links to our books on Amazon.com.
Definitely, absolutely. And we are about to start off with the continuation
of Alchemy. Yeah. So just a little audio before, like last in the previous episode, we were discussing alchemy in the 13th century. And Peter, forgive me, I don't recall the exact name of the alchemist that we were talking about. It just could be because my American ear has difficulty sometimes understanding names with your European accent. So it's really just my ear isn't familiar to the pronunciation of the name. But I know we were discussing an alchemist in the 13th century. And just to give our audience an idea as to why we're reaching back 800 years into the past to talk about alchemy. It's a very long history.
Ramón Llull.
Okay. Oh, please go ahead, Peter. Go ahead with the name again.
El hombre se llamaba Ramón Llull.
Okay.
That's Catalan.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was a Catalan or Catalonian sage and an alchemist and occultist and esoteric personality from the island of La Palma de Mallorca in Spain and the Mediterranean Sea, western pocket of the Mediterranean basin. I've been there and it's astonishing. It's for those of you who are not fully into the subject, it's very close to Ibiza. Everybody knows Ibiza, or at least that's a dream, a life goal to accomplish by the vast majority of the Americans who still haven't been to Europe.
And just for our audience, Peter, the reason that we are stretching back 800 years into the past to discuss alchemy, and if not the origins of alchemy, but we're going back maybe as far as we can. And I'm not one to say that we're going back as far as we can, but the reason that we picked up the story in the 13th century is because we're leading up to the present day where alchemy is not just merely a tool to transform base metal alloys into gold, or with Nikola Tesla to when he accessed the free energy source that is in the ionosphere to make our cars move down the road a little bit more efficiently, or to more efficiently light our houses with a better light bulb. I mean, we are talking about something that's so far, we're talking about like almost like the elixir of life, where we are talking about immortality. I mean, bodily and spiritually vitality that we could scarcely imagine otherwise without understanding alchemy. I mean, we're talking about the transformation of we're talking about a spiritual transformation in every positive way imaginable. I mean, that's what we're ultimately talking about. I mean, and you mentioned before we went on the camera that Tesla was making discoveries that are even 500 years into the future from where we're at today. So we're not just talking about like some people that are meddling trying to, you know, turn shit metal into gold, or again to light their homes, or wait, or it's just not just merely about a more free form of electricity. We're talking about tapping into an energy source that will, for all intents and purposes, almost make us immortal. I mean, that's kind of where this story is going. We're talking about the elixir of life here, Peter, and I wanted to make sure that I'm not overstepping myself, because I am scarcely as well versed in this subject as you. But as I piece along the conversation from yesterday, and I tie it into things that we discussed about Nikola Tesla a few weeks ago, it's my distinct impression that this is where this is going. So I want to make sure I'm not over speculating here. But and do I pretty much have the drift of that?
Well, yeah, definitely. The point of this conversation is the achievement and realizing the physical immortality. I'm
Yes.
repeating, the physical immortality, not a different incarnation, not reincarnating, but remaining in this realm and the same biosystem as we are present in now.
And Nikola
So,
Tesla achieved that 100 years ago.
well, yes,
Yeah.
there are certain measures of
And nor was he the
how
first. Nor was he the first, Peter. And that's why we're having this historical conversation.
well, Nikola Tesla has lived for only 87 years in his last incarnation. I mean, not still unfulfilled. He was 86 point few months, because he had died in January 1943 at the 33rd floor of the New Yorker Hotel. You know, at the day of the Orthodox Christmas. Some FBI reports claim even that he had died at January 8th or 9th or 10th. So the date of his discarnation is not exactly recognizable. But the point is that there are certain elements of eradication and eliminating the necessity and overcoming of three foes, the three major inimical forces that even can be comprehended as our friendly advisors. But let's say for now, at this point of the civilization and the growth of the global consciousness, that they are considered foes, and those are aging, illness, and death. So we are capable to do by maintenance of certain elements and application of certain gadgets of Tesla and certain alchemical means, we're definitely able to overcome aging, illness, and death. I hereby claim that, and I stand by it. So,
and I'm glad you said that, because that was like the whole point of summarizing where we were at with the 13th century the last time. I wanted to bring it back to, you know, right here and now in the year 2022. This is what we were talking about. I mean, nothing short of, like you said, aging, illness, and death, and the eradication of those three. I mean, that's what we were talking about here. So I just wanted to make that abundantly clear for not just myself, but our audience as well. Up to the oh shit, to the, I think our, looks like we had some little, okay, I'm gonna pause it a second, darn it. Having some technical difficulties here. Okay, so we are recording again. I don't know, we had a little bit of technical difficulties there. Peter, your screen froze up. I don't know if it was on Zoom, on Zoom's end, or something happened, but we're up and recording again.
Okay, so we're now live right now.
Oh, no, we're live now. Yeah, we're recording. I paused it once I realized that your screen had frozen. So we are back on track. But I forget, well, where I left off was that I was saying that the reason that we were talking about alchemy in the 13th century is that eventually we're working our way up to the 21st century. And what we were talking about is the eradication of illness, the aging process, and death. And that's no small feat, but that's what we're talking about here. So I just wanted to make sure for my own benefit and our audience as well, is that's what we're talking about when we're talking about alchemy.
Sure.
That's where we're at here, and that's what we're eventually. I mean, with the story of Nikola Tesla as well, not just. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Is that ultimately we're talking about spiritual transformation here on a level that.
Oh yeah.
Almost inconceivable. It's almost inconceivable in a good way, but that's where the conversation.
Almost inconceivable in a good way.
Yes,
That's where it is. Yeah.
So we're taking our time. We're taking our time with this history tour through. Where I mean, it's almost like we're walking on a trail and we're looking at all the trees and the moss and the birds, and we're pointing out all the details of everything that we see in the forest, and which is amazing. All the parts are fascinating, but I also wanted to keep in mind that, like what we just said before, this is what this whole conversation is coming to the point of the eradication of illness, aging, and death. So that's what we're talking about here. So Peter, with this will be my final interruption for the time being. I want to get back to where we were at before we had some technical difficulties.
All right, my friend. So there were, following the track, the alchemical, means and following the systems that are about to lead the persons, the particular ones, towards achievement of the great goal that we're just discussing about. We have to continue our treatise and the conversation about the great alchemical individuals over the past centuries, because it didn't come up as nothing to this point, to this stage of the civilizatory track and thread. So somebody has had to step up the first rules, or to discover, to unveil the great curtain in front of the eyes of what's called the adepts. And the adepts are the highest rated connoisseurs and knowledge bearers, the keepers of the secret knowledge that we are writing about in our books. And I just want to mention, in order to continue the previous story that we haven't finished, that the initiates, the initiated ones, nevertheless, were those ones who were marking the fact that the personality that they were attached to, that does not exist in a different manner except symbolically. So I'm just speaking about the last chapter about Ramon Llull, because we have to make the point that some of the personalities were fictitious. This is important because we still are not.
Did you say some of the personalities are fictitious?
Yeah, in a way, because those initiates, the initiated chroniclers from the era, who were the time mates and contemporaries with the great alchemists, those were carefully covering up their arcanum and their life's thoughts and words and deeds that have been ascribed to those imaginary personalities from what's called the past. And that way they have surely conveyed the information, the message about them throughout centuries, throughout the entire ages. And they have conveyed successfully the deepest, the most profound secrets of the occultism in the form of the scriptures that were and that have remained, for the unconnoisseurs, for the unadepts, nothing more than the mere biographies, the biodata. So in certain cases, it's not even important, it's not even necessary to know whether certain personalities were definitely existing, and the physical bodily systems, or whether they were just made up and invented. But because the knowledge is what is important. For example, you and I, we don't care if a genuine, real personality called William Shakespeare has ever been existing. What we pay attention to, and what we enjoy, and what we research, or what we were researching in our earlier days, our youth, were Hamlet and Othello and whatever else, Romeo and Juliet, and so on. So we weren't even thinking of and busting our minds by the fact whether Shakespeare really existed or not, or because these were just ascribed to Sir Francis Bacon, probably. So, or like we never discussed for real whether Homer truly existed, but we were certainly enjoying and researching at our university days, the Iliad and Odyssey. That's for sure. So I just want to.
I mean, the specific biographical details in history it's impossible to corroborate them one way or the other. But the universal themes and ideas and principles in these stories that moved people thousands of years ago, they still move us today because they are eternal, and they are basic first principles of the universe that will never change. And that's why they move us today as much as they did when they were first written.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I agree, because what's the point here is that the fashions and technology that comes out from the idea and everything else moves further, but the knowledge still. And the point is that those people were, I'm not saying just, but those were the great unveilers and uncoverers of the veil from the consciousness, because everything is about that. We're living in an astounding era of the widening of consciousness. Just look at the curiosity stream. So that's the utmost level of the esoteric and occult ideas conveyed through the means, and by the means of technology, by television and internet. And this is just exactly the same what we are talking about here, because that's the esoteric contribution of Tesla and those ones around and before him. So, okay, let's say we've scratched the story about Ramon Llull, but there are the great alchemists from the past that we certainly cannot omit to talk about here. We cannot avoid it. So one of them was certainly Paracelsus that we've mentioned a few days ago, and it was a Swiss Persian, and he was born in what's called the Middle Ages, or the medieval period. So when Latinized, his real name was Philippus Aureolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, or Philippus Aureolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim. So it was a fiend keeper and a physician and a real alchemist and esoteric personality. He was a kind of a predecessor of those later herbalists and botanists like Rudolf Steiner, who was also involved into the story, and everybody else who were dealing with herbs. So when we use herbs in order to widen our consciousness or to gain their power today, whether it was hemp or even ayahuasca. The personality that we certainly have to step up to, and that we cannot avoid talking about, is certainly Paracelsus. And in his great opus, his great book, Biographia Antiqua, the biographies of the antiquity, the sage, the scholar Francis Barrett, has ascribed certain characteristics to the name of Paracelsus, and they are characteristic to the titles, right? The prince of the physicians and philosophers of fire, the great paradoxical physician, or the doctor, the Swiss Trismegistus. You remember the referring of this name. It refers to Hermes Trismegistus, as above, so below. You're an esotericist, you certainly do, but I'm talking to a wide audience. So the first reformer of the philosophy of chemistry, the adept of alchemy, Kabbalah, and magic, a devoted and faithful secretary of the Mother Nature, the master of the elixir of life and the philosopher's stone, the great monarch of the chemical and alchemical arcanas or secrets.
And that's and just bringing the conversation back to Nikola Tesla, and even up to the present day, is that this energy source that is everywhere, Nikola Tesla was able to tap into it through meditation. And it's not just about turning base metals into gold, or just finding a way to light our homes or move our cars more efficiently down the road. We're talking about the elixir of life, the panacea of life, understanding the basic first principles, immutable first principles of the universe that lead to immortality, that lead to, again, the eradication of illness, aging, death, immortality, wisdom, tapping into the Akashic records, where everything that is, has been, and will happen is recorded. And that's what we're talking about here, Peter. Ultimately, is the elixir of life. And there is a long history. There is a history that is more than 800 years of men, not men and women, but people that have been practicing this, and practicing and knowing how to tap into the Akashic records and this free energy source where all the information and wisdom of the ages resides. I just wanted to make sure I'm clear for myself as well. I mean, that is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
that's where it is. And shall we proceed with
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of these arcane details from the 13th century, I'm unfamiliar with, Peter. So I find them all fascinating. A lot of this is new to me as well. So I'm doing my best to follow the details, and also keeping in mind where we're at in our previous conversations with Nikola Tesla. So please continue, because like I said, a lot of these details are all new to me. So have at it.
Sure. And nevertheless, you're an author yourself of a very thick compendium. It's a very large book, and that's worthy of mentioning. And your books are much thicker than my books now, for now at least.
For now.
And yeah. So
back to Paracelsus. I know I got
we're gonna arrange. This is a big announcement for our audience, because we're gonna arrange a series of talk shows dedicated exclusively to the phenomenon of Nikola Tesla. There will be maybe 10 of them, but it never ends. Even if we cover up 100 or 1,000 of them, there would never be end. There will never be enough. So let's turn back to Paracelsus. Paracelsus was definitely the most reputed one, and the most regarded, and the most recognizable and respected one amongst the alchemic and the hermetic philosophers and the Middle Ages, and it remained so till this day, even. Well, that man who was calling himself Paracelsus, which means the one who is higher, who is bigger than Celsus. Celsus was a philosopher and adept who was living a couple of hundred of years before him. And he has selfishly named himself Paracelsus, which means a higher than him. The one
Very
who
modest.
is above him.
Very modest, right? He's
Very
a modest
modest.
guy,
Yeah. It was self-praising. But the vanity also belongs to the nature of the nature. And the nature of human animal. And you can see it in even other species like cats. You know, those cats clashes when they are obviously expressing their vanity. So the more we just stated that the consciousness is expressing itself. We're always coming up to that point for the forms of life, and the more a nervous system of the particular form of life, namely the species, otherwise, to put it other wordly, the more the nervous system of an individual is developed, the more complex its particular psyche that we just tried to explain what it is, right? So I guess that a snail or a slug cannot be having vanity expressed in the same ways like a cat, or not to mention a human animal can be. So I would like to see the vanity in cases of porpoises and orcas and whales and dolphins, if they have it.
I'm sure they have it, yeah.
And
I don't think they're nearly as neurotic as human beings are, though.
That's a task for deeper research, definitely.
For another show.
Sorry?
That would be for another show, too.
That would be for another show, and we're gonna try
the neuroses of porpoises.
Yeah, and to catch up and to include some psychologists and some psychiatrists over here. So, and there will be a lot of them. This is an announcement. So that man who called himself Paracelsus.
One second, Peter. I'm gonna have to pause it for a minute.
No problem.
Okay, we are recording again here, so we've got a few.
Okay, so I don't have to push any button. It's getting viral, right?
Yes, it's getting viral, and it's also recording.
All right, yeah, because sometimes we have to be obedient to our wives. I just want to mention this word for both me and you. Or although we are in charge in our homes, not our wives. We're the chief commanders of the boat. All right, so.
So we're at Paracelsus and his modesty and putting himself ahead of Celsus. That's where we left off.
The great Paracelsus was claiming that one day in the future, all of the doctors and physicians and medicine men are going to be respecting him above all of the other physicians, all other colleagues. You know, it's like in my job, you know, the polyglot business, I would never say that I'm the best, better than, you know, the other polyglots amongst them. Because the more languages you know and you're able to speak, the more modest you become. But certainly wasn't the case with Paracelsus. So it's been officially, let's say, accepted that the date of birth Paracelsus was December 17, 1493. So it was the late 15th century. And he was an only child in his family, a unique offspring. So both his parental figures, you know, the father and mother, were interested deeply into the phenomena like medicine and chemistry. His father was a physician, and his mother was a nurse in a hospital. Not a nun, but a nurse. So, because in those times, the monastery, the Kloster, the monastery complexes were certainly attached to the hospitals as well as we know. So his mother was much more like a profane attached personality. So his father was influenced by the medieval books on alchemy, and yet as a young Persian, Paracelsus has got deeply interested for the scriptures of Isaac the Dutch. And Isaac the Dutch was an alchemist that we know very little about, because there's been very little data preserved about this person today. But he's not an invented person. He has compiled two essays or treatises, tractatus on alchemy. One is entitled Opera Mineralia Ioannis Isaaci Hollandi, Sive de Lapide Philosophica, about the Philosopher's Stone. That was published around 1600. And the second one is De Triplici Ordine, Elixiris et Lapidis Theoria. That was published around 1608. So both of the works have been published at the beginning of 17th century. So in the second one of those treatises, the author exposed the facts about the improved and enhanced method of compounding and creation of the basic metals in his opus called Sol. Sorry, not that was not the. I flipped off that was not the name of the book, but this is the crucial point, because he was transforming, he was doing the transfiguration of those basic metals, the average ones, into Sol et Luna, so into the gold and silver, because the sun and the moon, Sol et Luna, are the alchemical correspondences with the elements of gold and silver.
1 minute, Peter, on this one. So just keep in mind, we're going to have to be continuing the conversation into the next episode.
No problem. Just tell me when.
Okay. Oh, we have less than a minute now, so maybe this would be a great place to stop. So we're talking about.
Okay. He offers the precise illustration of the pots that we are supposed to be using for that process. We're continuing.
So how about 20 minutes? Would you be ready in 20 minutes to pick it up? Okay.
Very willingly.
So we're going to pick up this thread in 20 minutes.
All right.
All right, Peter, I'll see you shortly.
With most pleasure. See ya.